Fay is lucky enough today to get to speak with Chasten Buttigieg, and he was born and raised in Traverse City, Michigan. He received his bachelor's degree in theater and global studies from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire and his master's in education from DePaul University. He's had many jobs, many interesting jobs, most recently as a middle school drama and humanities teacher. Right now, he lives in South Bend, Indiana, with his husband, Peter, whom maybe a few of you have heard of, and their two rescue dogs. Fay, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you all for joining us.
About.
Hello, please remember to keep yourself muted.
What is
Okay, so
Hi, Fay. You're on mute. And then some other folks are not on mute. This reminds me of being in the classroom all over
I
again.
wrote a book that I listened to.
Hi, Fay. You got it. There you are. You're unmuted now. Go ahead.
It was underneath the PowerPoint. Okay. Hello, everybody. Chasten, I'm so happy to talk to you again. And I loved your book.
Thank you.
And the short phone interview we did for Letters from Camp Rehoboth. And I'm glad to be able to chat again. How's the tour going?
It's been interesting, right? We're all living in interesting times. The bummer is most of it is virtual. Well, all of it has been virtual. And so some of that's convenient. You can do MSNBC in your pajamas, at least your pajamas from the bottom down. You know, so it's easier to talk with folks and connect with folks, but it is a bummer to not be out on the road, because I loved connecting with people on the campaign trail, meeting them, you know, seeing them face to face. But it is still such an honor to just see this book on the shelves, see people reading the book, and I'm so happy that I get to share it.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm going to jump right in. I understand you were folding laundry when Mayor Pete, or Peter as you call him, first brought up the idea of running for president.
Yeah.
What'd you think? What was your first thought?
Well, I just sort of went along with it. I said, sure, why not? You know, consider it. He said he and some of his advisors and his closest friends and allies were considering, you know, launching an exploratory. And I said, yeah, okay, why not? And then we went on to talking about the rest of the day. I was talking about school, and it's kind of funny now to think back of, you know, to that conversation, because I had no idea what it meant to run for president. You know, what would that mean for my personal life, my family, our lives, our marriage, you know, the stress, the ups and downs of running for president. I had no idea what to expect, but I'm still so glad that he did it.
Well, you didn't know what it meant. What did it mean to you in the final analysis? What did it mean?
Yeah, well, you know, I thought I would have to be supportive and be expected to be supportive. And of course, I believe in him and I love him. I think he is one of the most talented political minds in this country. I'll toot his own horn for him. I'm so proud of him. But I did not realize, you know, I left the classroom. I went on the campaign trail full time as a surrogate. I did not, as I describe in the book, understand what that would mean for my mental health, my physical health, how hard it is to run for president. You know, eating Starbucks, running through an airport, jumping on your 8th flight of the day, going to your 4th state, and crashing into some springy bed at a Courtyard Marriott, you know, in a state you don't even know where you're at. I had no idea what it was like to be out on the campaign trail, but I also couldn't have anticipated all the good that came from it, and truly what that did for me, my own understanding of my story, and what I can contribute, you know, to the larger picture.
That's amazing. You described it as being inside of a blender, which I thought was a terrific way to talk about it. What do you think the candidacy meant to other people? I know what it meant to you, but what did it mean to other people in this country?
I think it meant so many things to so many different types of people. I know we would meet older gay couples who had lost their families. They had lost all of their friends to AIDS. And the thought of Peter, just the thought that someone like him could exist, was enough for them. And they would meet us on these rope lines and just break down in tears, you know, clutching onto him. And then we met other people who were never political in their entire lives, had gone their entire lives without getting involved in a campaign, and now they were out knocking on doors every weekend for Peter. Folks who had switched from voting Republican to voting Democrat. I mean, so many different types of people connected to this campaign, and it meant so much to them in very different ways. Teachers who felt seen and understood, parents who felt like maybe there was hope for the next generation, LGBTQ couples and individuals who never thought that we would see this day in American history. And that was really exciting to be a part of.
Oh, that's super. I love the quote that initially you did not like politicians. You called them a necessary evil. Okay, what changed your mind?
Yeah, I grew up in Northern Michigan. I was never political. I never even felt motivated or welcome into the political conversation. My mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was in high school. Obviously, I was a very closeted teenager. And I had a lot of questions about what power meant specifically for people like me, my family, in places like Northern Michigan. I just felt like people in Washington probably don't really care about us. They probably don't even get us or what life is like here, especially for the scared, closeted teenager who's just
Sure.
trying to get by. And so I just had an idea of who politicians were and felt like, they've got a lot of talk. It's a lot of hot air. They probably have no idea what it's like to live in my shoes or my parents' shoes. And that's kind of the bias I went through life with until I fell in love with a politician and realized the tremendous good that can come from being in those positions. But it's people like Pete who hold that office or who run for office because they want to do good. They believe in using that office and that platform to do good. That's not always the case with every politician. We know that for sure. We have a
We do.
game show host in the White House right now. I don't think everybody who runs for office truly believes that they can use that platform for good, but I certainly didn't think that many politicians believed that either. And then it really changed my mind
I bet it
when I fell in
did.
love with Pete. Yeah.
I bet it did. Are you getting to have a little more relaxed time these days?
Well, we've got 4 weeks to go until the election. And so Peter and I are doing everything that we can. He's certainly doing a lot more than me right now. I'm very happy to see him out there on the trail as much as we can be, right? But constantly on a Zoom or doing media. But because everything is happening from home, that does mean I get to see him more often. And sometimes I'll say, I feel like I didn't even get to see you today, even though I've seen you all day, just because we're so busy. But it is nice to at least be in his presence again.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now you're a super social media person. I understand you went from 1,000 Twitter followers to 300,000 in just a few weeks on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
How do you use social media? How did you use it in the campaign, and how are you using it now?
Well, I guess I prescribe to the thinking that social media is a necessary evil as well. It can feel so dark and gloomy and scary on there. And the reason that social media feels that way, or much of our media feels that way, is because people profit off of us being very angry. So you don't open Twitter and feel uplifted and you see all the good. You're usually punched in the face with the bad.
Right.
And I believed that I should just use this platform, use this opportunity to pull back the curtain, show people what it's really like to run for president. Also poke fun at the person that I love. They love to say that the spouse has humanized the candidates, but I thought that could be my opportunity, but also to use that platform for some good and help people feel seen and understood and heard, and also just provide a necessary timeline cleanse or a laugh along the way. I guess it works.
I guess so. I think it really did. What are you exactly doing for the campaign now with your social media? What is your purpose during the next 4 weeks? What are you planning?
Yeah, well, at first, I'm a strong believer in relational organizing. We call it relational organizing now, but really it's just good old-fashioned organizing. So we're not always calling people, texting people, knocking on people's doors. I think what I am trying to convince people to do is to get comfortable being uncomfortable, that we have to reach out to people that we know are ready to vote for this president again and talk about what's at stake, what is on the line in our personal lives. I grew up in a very Catholic Midwestern family where we did not talk about our feelings, and we did not talk about religion, and we did not talk about politics. And I think many people are told not to talk about politics, but politics is deeply personal. It is the thing that determines whether our lives go well or worse. And so I'm trying to use my platform to convince people to have those conversations. I also appreciate shedding some light on truths that some people don't want to accept, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ community. And using that platform to help inform other people of not only how to have those conversations, but why they should have those conversations, equip them with maybe some necessary tools to head into those conversations, which can sometimes feel like a battle. I know I am related to people who are of a very different political persuasion, but many of us need to have those conversations. I know we love these people. I come from a family where family comes first. But we also have to be willing to talk about some of the most personal, scary things in our lives. And for me, just as a married gay man, that's the rights that I have and the rights that I don't want to lose.
Well, thank you. I tell you, I want to go back a little bit to your early days, which you
Yeah.
started to talk about in your memoir. You told us that your parents did not kick you out of the house when you came out to them as
Right.
gay, but you left home anyway.
Mhm.
You slept at friends' houses and even in your car. Why was that?
Shame, mostly shame. I was in 4-H. I was raising steers. I was in a pretty roughneck community, where I was learning that to be a man had to look a very certain way. It had to sound a certain way. That if you were a man, you were a God-fearing, gun-loving, cow-raising American. And
Wow.
there were so many different lessons that I was learning along the way, whether, from the kids poking fun at me in the locker room, pushing me down in the hallways in school, or the things I was hearing in youth group at church or in 4-H, that whatever was inside of me, this difference that I recognized inside of me, it was twisted and it was wrong. And so when I finally worked up the courage to come out, I did not want to bring shame on my family. I never wanted my mom to have to utter the sentence, "My son is gay."
Wow.
And I just figured that I'd lose a lot of people, a lot of friends, and that I would be such an embarrassment to them.
Well, of
And so
course,
I figured
having
I'd
read,
spare them the misery.
yeah, having read about it, I feel very sorry that those were your feelings, but that certainly was not unlike so many others. What did watching television like Will and Grace and that kind of thing, Ellen, what did that do for you?
Yeah. And just to follow up on our last question, it's so important that people know that my parents brought me home, that they
Yes,
called me.
yes.
Um, this book is not only about my journey, it's a little bit about theirs. And I hope it's inspiring to other people as well, that my parents had no idea what it meant to be gay. And they hugged me close and they told me, "We have no answers. All we can tell you is we know it's going to be hard, but we love you and we'll be here for you." And that's really important for me to share with other people, because they are also, beacons of hope, I think, in their own way. Growing up watching television, Ellen DeGeneres was probably the first gay person I came to understand as a gay American.
Mhm.
And I was sort of nervous to watch her show, but my mom would also sometimes watch her show. And it was like a little hint to me that maybe it's okay to be gay. But at that time, it felt like being gay was something that other people could have. Like you could have it like over there, like in Hollywood or in New York, but not here, not in Northern Michigan. Loved Will and Grace, terrified to watch it in front of my family. Um, I was so afraid to laugh at Jack being, loud and funny, because that's who I wanted to be. I wanted to be loud and funny, but I did not want my brothers or my family to think that because I was laughing at that joke, that meant that I was gay. I did not want them to learn that secret about me.
Well, with your years of depression over being gay and internalized homophobia in high school and in college, do you think it's gotten easier now? Did you meet people along the way during the campaign to give you an idea what it's like now as compared to when you were in high school?
I want to say yes. Well, the problem is the LGBTQ community is not monolithic. And when I went out on the campaign trail, I told the campaign I want to spend a lot of time in the community because I'm a white cisgender gay man. I am one letter. I am one very privileged letter in this acronym. And life in reality is so different for people in our community. That's why I spent so much time out on the trail, speaking with people, listening to their stories. That way I had a better understanding of just where I came from, but also what I needed to take with me to Washington. I met some of the most powerful, strong, well-worded young people who would take me to task on politics, who were half my age, who came out at a much younger age, who had such a strong sense of self-identity that I was so envious of. And then I met people who had never come out. They would whisper in our ear. I left home when I was 17, ran away, haven't seen my parents in 40 years. And they were still in the closet because they were living in, the middle of Arkansas, and just felt that it was simply unsafe to be out. So I want to say, yes, it's gotten better because in some ways we have more media, we have more attention, we have more ways for younger people or queer people in general to connect, to feel seen, to feel heard. But that doesn't mean everything has gotten better. And certainly you understand that as well.
Absolutely.
It's gotten better for some, but until it's gotten better for all, we have a lot of work to do.
We sure do. And what I thought was interesting also in your memoir was it beyond talking about the gay issues, you went to college and graduate school, and you had a tremendous amount of student debt, which you and your husband took on. And what do you think the political solution for this problem is? Have you thought about what the next administration should do about this?
Yeah, I think we have to start by increasing Pell Grants. Pell Grants sort of helps me keep my head above water for a while, but I could not afford housing and books and food, and my tuition all on a Pell Grant. I also went into college not knowing a thing. My parents never went to college. I was a first generation college student. I go to financial aid and they would just tell me to sign on the dotted line for a number that meant that I could cover everything. And I did, because I figured these people are offering me aid. It's financial aid, and therefore they believe I need it. So I took it. It shouldn't be so expensive to go to school. And we got to stop telling people, to climb out of poverty, to make something of yourself, you got to go to college. And then I did that and everyone said, well, you got to go to grad school. But, the lie that I was fed was go to college and everything will be fine. Just go get a bachelor's degree and you'll be great. And I did. And I wound up working 4 part-time jobs, sleeping in a spider-infested basement apartment, wondering, how am I ever going to get above this, especially going into a field like arts education? So I think the next administration has to take a hard look at least increasing Pell Grants. But one, what does it truly mean to believe and support public education and higher education in this country? And I believe it should be free for many students whose families cannot afford it. And we should start there. I think that's the floor.
Well, and that's an interesting, I didn't think about the Pell Grant situation, but that certainly is a first step. And another issue that you talk eloquently about in the book is that you were hospitalized at one point.
Yeah.
without health insurance.
Yeah.
What role did that play in your thinking or Mayor Pete's thinking about the future of health insurance in this country?
Yeah. Well, I know this is a pretty tenuous topic, but I had left Starbucks. I don't want to give away all the stories in the book, but I left Starbucks. A guy came in and pulled a knife on us, and I thought, I don't know if I can do this much longer. And I eventually left Starbucks and was working other part-time jobs. I was letting out my apartment on Airbnb, trying to make ends meet, and found myself without health insurance. I had health insurance through Starbucks until I lost it. And sparing everyone the details, one day there's a lot of blood involved, and something is clearly wrong, where I really have to go to the hospital, and I didn't want to, because I knew it was game over, that I could not afford to go to the hospital. And I remember the second day in the hospital asking the nurse who kept scanning all the medicines, are you charging me for everything you scan? And she laughed and said, how do you think this works? And I said, I got to see the doctor. I got to go home. I can't be here. There's no way. I think I came out of the ER with about $12,000 in medical debt. And these telemarketers would call up, or collectors would call up, and I'd say, I'm sorry, I don't have any money. And they would say, I'm so sorry to hear that. Can you make a payment of $12,000 today? I don't think anyone in this country should be faced with that fear. Can I take care of myself, or will I just go bankrupt? And, I was by myself. Think about the people who have children, who have families, who sacrifice their own health to take care of other people. I remember going through the pharmacy with my mom when she was going through different chemotherapy treatments, and my mom just driving away without the medication because she couldn't afford it. I believe we need to transition this country to a Medicare for all platform. I know that was a big conversation during the primary. Pete proposed gradually getting there, but I do believe that's the direction our country needs to go in, because I think healthcare is a human right, and I don't ever want to have anybody feel the way I felt laying on a gurney in the emergency room, feeling like, well, that's it. I failed at the game of life because I got sick. That's wrong.
No, it is a problem for so many people. Even myself, I went to the drive-in at the drugstore and didn't pick up one of the prescriptions because it was $185. And it's like, nope, not this week. And so we have to do something about it. Well, so doing something about many of these things has been your platform. If Peter had won the White House, what would your first gentleman's project have been, do you think?
I spent a lot of time in sort of 4 different pools out on the campaign trail, things that were very personal to my own story. I spent a lot of time with the LGBTQ community, spent a lot of time with teachers and students, artists, and then homeless service providers. And I believe Pete had it right when he said we are at we have this crisis of belonging in our country. Those are 4 communities where I feel like I at least had something to say when I came to the table. They're very close to my experiences. Something along the way that made all of the hard stuff feel a little less scary was arts education. My theater teacher in high school saved my life. It was the only place I truly felt seen, truly felt alive. I took classes at the Old Town Playhouse in downtown Traverse City. And, I was walking through the hallways in school feeling like I couldn't be weird, I couldn't be different. But then I went to the Old Town Playhouse and they encouraged me to be weird, and they encouraged me to be different. They encouraged me to find my own voice. So I want to make sure every kid in our country has access to arts education. It's usually we don't cut football, but we cut, arts education. And that I just think we don't value the arts and the humanities enough. So I would love to see a greater increase, not only in support federally, with federal dollars, making sure communities have more access to the arts and the humanities, but I'd like to see some backup from the Department of Education as well. But a lot of the budgets fall on states, and we need people to be advocating for arts education in their state houses, because the arts do save lives.
Absolutely. Speaking of the arts, just a personal question: do you follow Randy Rainbow?
Yes. Yeah. Those videos are great.
Aren't they just?
Yeah.
Do you want to get back to teaching? Would you like to be back teaching?
In some capacity, yeah. It wasn't necessarily the content that I was teaching, English or social studies. I also taught theater. It was just being that person in the room. I liked being an ally for my students. I liked that they liked coming to my classroom. And middle school is a tough time. It's a tough time for everyone. And I sprang out of bed every morning to go to school because I liked being that person for them in that space where they felt safe, to explore the world and their ideas, their thoughts, and their identity.
It's terrific. What do you envision for the future then for you and your husband? I know it's a hard question because you don't know what kind of job he will be doing next, and I'm sure you can't tell me. So what do you envision?
I don't know. And I'm not giving you a political answer, I promise. I want my husband to be happy. He, I think, is happiest when he's working on really big issues. he reads a lot, he writes a lot. He's such a thoughtful, worldly person. Right now, he's, doing a lot of different things, his podcast and his book and campaigning. And, he's got his PAC where he's supporting down ballot candidates. He's doing a lot of different things. And I'm excited to see him settle on something where he, kind of has an idea of what he's doing every day, if that makes sense. I really do just want to see him happy. And I think he's really happy when he's in the arena, when he's in the game, because right now our arena is filled with people who aren't there for the right reasons. And I know Pete is. And I want to see him stay involved, because not only do I believe he's brilliant, but I know he inspires other people. People listen to what he has to say. I think he's a voice of reason and hope and progress. Who knows what that means for him? But beyond that, I don't think we've been too cagey about the family talk. We're excited to keep talking about how we do that. Not necessarily easy. We keep trying, but we're just excited to see what that means for both of us.
Very exciting, very exciting. Well, speaking about being happy, which you were, please tell us about your rescue pups. Please tell us about the dogs.
They're doing well. Buddy and Truman are doing well. We have 2 rescue dogs. Buddy's a Puggle, although I think he's got to be something more than Pug and Beagle. He's too big. When we adopted him, he was about 20 pounds overweight. He's shedding a lot of pounds, which is good. We're exercising him a lot. Then Truman, of course, is our very quiet Beagle Lab mix, kind of always giving you the one eyebrow. I don't think he likes any of us, but we love them. We love them dearly, and we're so happy to be closer to them.
Now, I understand they do social media as well. Is that true?
Yes, that's right. That's right. They have their own account. We let them run their own account. We try to let them find their own voice.
I think it's great. So tell me we don't want to give away a lot of stories in the book, but I know you did meet President Obama, and you had an interesting first meeting. So would you like to share that with us?
I think it's one of the good ones. Long story long, early on dating Pete, I tell the story in detail in the book, but I did not own a suit. I'd never owned a suit before in my life. And he asked me if I owned a suit. I said I did not. So he bought me one for Christmas. And then he took me to the White House Christmas party. And it's one of the first times I really felt that imposter syndrome. Like, I do not belong in spaces like this. I should not be here. Who are all these senators and these very fancy people with big titles? And it's DC. Everyone's passing out business cards. And the Obamas come into the room, give a little Christmas greeting, and then you can go up to the rope line to say hello to them. And Pete kept pushing me to the rope line. I said, go say hi. You should go say hello. And I'm reaching my hand over the person in front of me, trying to, shake President Obama's hand. And this guy comes barreling in behind me and just kind of knocks me off my balance. And I turn around to see, who's this jerk, doing this. And then I feel President Obama's hand on my hand. And I quickly turn around. And I don't know why, but I see that he's holding my hand. So I recoil. And then I, mid recoiling, I realized now I'm recoiling from the president. So I stopped on his pointer finger. And I just shook his pointer finger very vigorously. I said, "Merry Christmas, Mr. President." I was mortified. I was almost brought to tears. I thought I was such an embarrassment to my, up and coming political star boyfriend, Mayor Pete. And I thought when the Obamas went to bed that night, they surely were talking about what a weirdo I was. But then I went on the campaign trail and realized that stuff happens to you every day. There's so much weirdness and goofiness out there. But it was, at the moment, very mortifying.
Well, I want to tell people that there are a number of really fun stories in the book, as well as a lot of incredible inspection of topics that are so important these days. What advice would you give to young people, especially now with COVID and this incredible election season, even us olders, not just youngsters? Some of us have this profound despair about the future. how do you keep yourself up, and what can you tell us?
Yeah.
You seem very cheery, and I love that. And so tell me what we should do when we're thinking about the future.
It's just iced coffee, Faye. I just drink a lot of coffee.
Oh, okay.
You know, like I said earlier, our media ecosystem and social media is designed to keep you there, and they keep you there by frightening you and by making you feel so outraged and angry that you keep scrolling or you keep watching. We don't see the goodness of our country on social media too often. We definitely don't see it in the national media. Yeah, I know from doing this book tour, many shows have said, your book sounds nice, but we really want to talk about Trump. And that's sad. You know, everybody wants to talk about the doom and the gloom. When I was on the campaign trail, I met inspiring people every single day. People who are just inherently good, and they're doing such good work in their communities, such loving people. I remember this woman in Iowa who was running an after-school theater program out of her own pocket, but it was also sort of like an underground LGBTQ group because these kids had no place to go. So she was sort of like the safe space in the community when there wasn't one. You know, she's doing this on her own dime and on her own time. People who donate, people who show up and do the work, people who run the food banks and the homeless shelters. Our country is a good place, full of good people, but you don't get to see them or hear about them very often. And that is what inspires me. It's not, if you spend your entire day on Twitter, nothing is going to inspire you.
Right.
But you also have to realize that allyship, to show up for other people, is more than just good intentions and happy thoughts. That you need to use your words and your work to show people that you truly care about them. And I got to see that every day out on the trail. Now, for young people, myself included, I'm thinking about starting a family in this country, right? The world's on fire. It seems like Washington is melting as well. You know, how many years do we have until it's too late? It's very hard to afford things like housing and healthcare and find a stable job in this country. Of course, that can feel really overwhelming and crushing. Starts with electing people who believe in changing the system, changing the game, and advocating for things that will improve your life. But you can't always expect other people to do the work as well. So I would encourage people not only to vote, but to get involved. Look around, look around your community and look at all the people who are committed to doing the work, not just talking about the work, but actually doing it.
What do you think of the recent news that there seem to be 2 Supreme Court justices who are discussing overturning gay marriage?
I don't think I'm allowed to use those words
Okay.
on this type of talk. I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. We got this right 5 years ago. And I hope yesterday maybe for some people was a wake-up call that there are people on our Supreme Court, there are people in our government who would gladly take that right away from us. But I do not believe it is my job to continuously call people homophobic and bigots and point my finger and yell. I think part of doing the work is inviting people to the right side of history by having the hard conversations, by saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm fearful of, this is what my love looks like. Can I explain who I am to you, and having those really hard conversations rather than just pushing people back into the arms of people like Donald Trump. I'm not surprised about the Supreme Court justices. I mean, we knew it when they voted against our right in the first place. What I was a little surprised to see yesterday was how many conservatives were showing their cards and gladly reminding people that they would see those rights taken away, which is why it is so important for all of us not only to tell our truths. It's why I wrote the book I did. I hope that people feel seen. I hope it helps them feel more understood and connected and loved. We have to have those hard conversations. And if you can come out, please come out, because it changes hearts, it changes minds. But if you're not ready, that's okay. We're all going to keep doing the work for you. But yesterday was a wake-up call, I hope, for some people.
Well, I think we're probably going to wrap up in a bit and go to Q&A, but my
All right.
last question
Okay.
is what haven't you been asked? You've probably repeated some of these stories many times and on the virtual trail, but what haven't you been asked? What information do you want to offer that you haven't had a chance?
Oh, interesting. Goodness.
Oh no, I have you stumped.
Well, it's funny because I think I'm an open book, and you don't often get that in politics. It's why I wrote the book I did. I feel like, and no offense to anybody else, but a lot of the political memoirs that I was perusing in trying to find a voice for my own didn't make me feel like that person understood me or saw me. And I just threw it all out there. I talked about the really hard stuff. I talked about the inspiring stuff. I talked about,
You talked about a drag queen teaching you how to make a Cosmo. I love that.
yeah, I don't think you read that very often in political memoirs. You know,
No, you don't.
I wish I would have had a book like this when I was younger, to see someone describe in detail the battle with internalized homophobia and the happy tingly feelings that rush through your body when you finally kiss a boy for the first time. I mean, I described it all because I want people to feel less alone. And I suppose I don't really feel like I'm hiding much. Some people told me not to write the book that way, but that's politics, and I didn't believe in playing politics with my own story. So I guess the thing that I want to tell people is just that they are not alone. This book isn't just for young queer people. Straight people can read this book too. You can read it, straight people. I give you permission, but it's for everyone to feel less alone and for everyone to find power in their own vulnerability and their own story.
Well, thank you so much. The best to you, and I hope we all have a happy outcome in November. The
Thank you.
best to Mayor Pete. And now we're going to go on to Q&A. And thank you. It's been delightful chatting with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, everyone, thank you. Just a reminder that we do support free speech. We do encourage folks to speak their minds, but we also love civility. So when you're called upon to ask your question, if you could please keep it germane to today's book, to today's topics. Also keep it short. And after you're done asking your question, if you could please mute yourself. So we are actually going to start off with Edward Albin, who is with the Thrive Youth Group of Camp Rehoboth, and he has a couple of questions he wants to ask. So Edward, do you want to unmute yourself so you can ask your questions?
Hi, I'm Edward and my pronouns are he, him. So the first question I was going to ask you what effect do you hope your story has on teens and young adults who are discovering who they are?
I wish someone would have told me when I was battling all of that internal hate that I didn't owe anyone an explanation for it. I felt so obligated to tell people who I was and to share this secret. I was forced to believe that in order to reconcile those feelings and that doubt and that internalized homophobia, that I had to shout it from the rooftops. That I owed it to everyone, that I should have, written it up in the newspaper and shared it with the community. And I feel like young people just need to know that they don't owe anyone a damn thing when it comes to their identity, when it comes to their process, when it comes to their, journey, that you do not owe anyone an explanation for your humanity and your dignity. And I hope that, I have a few other words to say about that in the book, but I hope if young people read it, I hope that they get that from the story, that it will, for some of us, be hard and it will be scary, but it will also be thrilling and exciting and lovely. But along the way, you don't owe anyone an explanation for who you are, and you certainly don't have to share that journey with other people if you don't want to.
Yeah. And then I have one more, which is, what was it like exploring your past experiences for the sake of your memoir?
Something I did, I called on folks that I went to high school with, that I really didn't develop strong relationships until after high school, but I called people because I wanted to sort of fact check my own experiences. High school was really hard for me. And it was by going to therapy that I learned about how our brain will literally erase or block bad memories. And so I remember talking to a therapist, like asking, like, why don't I remember childhood? Why don't I remember school the way my peers do? Because it was so traumatic. And I wanted to talk to other friends and see if that was their experience. I had some friends who it wasn't really their experience. They didn't think high school was that hard or that, people were that mean. And then I had other friends who did come out after high school as well, feel the exact same way, that it was simply unsafe to be themselves. And that was kind of hard for me to hear from other people. Another one of the hardest things to hear was when, when you write a book as forthcoming and honest like this, you have to remember that, like, people you probably don't want to read it are going to read it. And so I'd have friends call and say, I had no idea. I didn't really talk about my sexual assault with many people until my experience with sexual assault, until the book came out. And that was kind of hard to know that some people that I love dearly were going to read about all this hurt that they maybe didn't know about. But I felt that it was really important to share because I wanted other people to feel seen through those stories and feel a little less alone. And that's why I shared them. But it was a little hard for me to sort of hit send on that final manuscript, knowing that it was going to go out into the world.
Thank you so much for publishing all your thoughts.
Thank you.
All right, and as I said, Ed is with the youth group at Camp Rehoboth. Camp Rehoboth is one of our co-sponsors tonight, and we will be sending out links to all the different organizations. Next up, we had Ronald, who had a question about your travel experiences. Ronald, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
I think I just did. Can you
All
hear me?
right. Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Hi, Chasten. You and Pete are always struck me amazingly positive people in the face of, I don't hate and all kinds of diversity and opposition, maybe. Because I know you couldn't pick and choose your audience all the time. Could you tell me, you had to have one truly awful experience in your travels. And I wondered if you could just briefly talk about that and how you dealt with it.
I had a really tremendous body woman with me on the trail. Her name was Emily. And I'm still in touch with Emily today. And I remember some protesters showed up at one of my events, and I was separate from Pete out on the campaign trail. And I went to get out of the car, and some people were like spitting at me and yelling at me. And it was really nasty stuff. And the team said, nope, back in the car. And Emily played Taylor Swift on the car stereo, and I was really shaken by it, to be honest. Sometimes that self-doubt comes rushing in, right? Am I deserving of this platform? Do I deserve to be here? And Emily, I remember, just looked at me with such a loving but stern look and just said, this is not about you. This does not define you. And it was just a reminder that people probably disagreed with my husband's politics, but my dignity wasn't up for debate. My humanity wasn't up for debate. These people had an idea of who I was. They did not know the real me. And she was actually such a rock throughout the process. I talk a little bit more about her in the book. I hope she writes a book someday about what it was like navigating that process, but I don't think I would have been able to get through some of the hard stuff without her, because it is an exhausting, year. But sure, there can be nastiness, but I never want the very vocal minority to outshine all the good that happened on the trail. But it is important that we learn from those experiences as well.
All right, I think some of your team might be on this call because there's about 3 comments about how Emily is the best and Emily rocks and like little praise hands going on. So
yeah, follow her on Twitter. She's a great follow. Emily.
What's the Twitter handle again?
Her name is Emily Vordy.
All right.
She's fantastic.
Oh, that's great. Lisa Schofield had a question actually about social media. So
Sure.
Lisa, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question? Lisa, are you still on the call? Lisa, we'll give you a couple more minutes and then we're going to have to move on to somebody else.
Okay, I'm
There you
Linda
go.
Sheffield. Is that correct?
Okay, Linda. Yeah, okay, maybe
Okay.
it's Linda. You go
Sorry.
for it. Go for it.
So I actually had two questions, but Chasten, you went from 1,000 followers on Twitter to 300,000 followers on Twitter very quickly, and you have probably gained even more since then. You are a person to follow on Twitter, and there are a lot of people who look to how you react to things and what you say, and really kind of base how they feel about something on what you have provided. So you have this new platform.
Yeah.
What do you think you're going to do with it? How do you think you're going to take today's experiences and literally help move this forward, move the conversation forward through that?
Yeah. Well, first, pink hair, ruby lip, it's on point. You know, I sometimes, like, you know, on the debate night, I reminded people, like, hey, look, the sassy tweets tonight isn't going to change anybody's mind. They will not change anybody's mind about this election. But then I like proceeded to put out a sassy tweet about, like, we can all just agree that, like, we're kind of playing a game here on Twitter, because I believe it's like less than 20% of American adults are actually on Twitter. And of the people who are on Twitter, it's like less than 10% of the people who are on Twitter make up most of the content. So it's a very, very, very small fraction of American people who are paying attention to the things that are happening on Twitter. Unfortunately, most journalists, most people who get to write the headlines and make the news are on Twitter. And so a lot of people think Twitter is real life, but that's a separate chapter in the book, and you can see what or read what I have to say about that. I don't think it helps anybody by just like dumping gasoline on a dumpster fire. Like, there's so many things that I could do with my day and time. And I won't lie, like, I think most of us are addicted to the platform. We're addicted to getting news. We want to see what's happening in the world constantly, but I don't want to use my platform just to like poke people in the eye. I will say, however, I am a staunch ally of my own community. And when I feel like people are like, you know, like Moira Rose, like coming for my bebes, like, that's my community, right? Like, don't come for my friends, don't come for my family. And then I feel like I need to stick up or stand up and say something, hopefully in the kindest way possible, something that helps maybe elevate the dialogue or remind people of a fact. Yesterday, I was surprised how many conservatives were telling me I was lying when I said the GOP's platform had reversing gay marriage in it and it was anti-LGBTQ. And I just thought, well, maybe if I just share the platform, they could be reminded of this simple fact. I mean, I want to sort of elevate the dialogue. Some people are on there just to poke you in the eye. And that's why they hide behind like cat emojis. But I think we have an opportunity to show who we are and the things that we value through the ways in which we use our social media. So obviously, I've been talking a lot about my book. I've been talking about, you know, vulnerability and sharing our stories. I've been talking a lot about what's at stake in this election. What I don't try to do too much is just spend time on there making fun of other people or poking fun at other people. I would never want to be seen making fun of other people. But sometimes when someone's being like overtly homophobic, sometimes it's fun to like dip your toe in the fire. But if we're all just spending our time in the dumpster fire, well, then we're all just on fire, you know, and who's going to put the fire out?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
You got
you.
it.
Thank you, Linda. Sorry, I got your name wrong.
Oh, don't worry about it.
So Ian Friedland had a question about the election. And I just want to point out also, Viv made a comment to everyone remember to vote and to also bring your entire community with you. So the library is going to promote that as well. So my friend Ian, are you still on here?
I am, Rebecca. Thank you.
Hey, all right, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, so Chasten, when Joe Biden wins the election in 3 or 4 weeks, will you accept the nomination as Secretary of Education?
I will not. There are much more qualified people than me to take on that role, but I'll support that person as best as I can.
All right, that's great. Some folks have been asking, have some writing questions. One is Claire Snyder Hall. Claire, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question about writing?
Hi. I think this might have been a little bit covered already, but Chasten, thank you so much for writing this book. It was really amazing to read it, and
Thank you.
it just really resonated. Even though I'm a lot older than you are, your coming out experience and mine were very parallel in a lot of ways. But I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about the process of writing the memoir. And I just finished writing a memoir, and it was
Congrats.
hard to figure out like what stories I should tell that would be interesting to people other than my friends, and reviewing my life and trying to make a story out of it really had kind of a profound effect on the way I've been thinking
Yeah.
about my current situation and what I want to do. So if you could
Yeah.
just comment a little bit on that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. I think you got to know, like, when I hit send, it felt so incomplete. It felt like there were 100 more stories I could have told. It was very important to me that I just thought it was funny that they asked me to write a memoir. I'm 31 years old. I was like, I could write essays, but I don't know if I could write a memoir. But, that's what you're supposed to do in politics, I guess. I just really wanted the book to be conversational. It was very important to me from the beginning that this book felt like you were just like grabbing a cocktail or grabbing a cup of coffee with me, and I was just giving you the long and short of it, right? I wanted it to be a breezy read. I am a big fan of like beach books. Like, can I read it in one day at the beach? If so, then I'll probably pick it up. And so for me, I think I'm very expressive. It's hard for me to sit in this chair. I wanted the book to feel like you were sitting across from me at a cafe, and when I'm talking with my friends, I go off. So in order to do that, I actually spent a lot of time telling stories on my feet, recording them, pretending my friends were in front of me. I would go on long walks with Buddy or Truman, mostly Truman because he can handle the longer walks, Buddy can't, and just record myself telling stories. Some people probably thought I looked like a crazy person, but I really wanted the book to sound and read conversationally. And so I found that I tell stories very differently when I'm recording them versus when I'm in my head typing them. And then I try not to censor myself too much. I felt like I was very worried about what's the New York Times going to say about this when, they review it? Is it political enough? Is this like the big beefy chunk of political literature like my husband's book is? And I stopped comparing myself to all these people and books. I actually stopped reading other people's memoirs halfway through writing this book because I was so in my head about finding my own voice, and I had to stop comparing myself to other people. And I just wanted it to be my own. But I think I found a lot of strength in that too. This is my story. I get to tell it my way. And if it's not for other people, then it's not for other people. And so I hopefully you don't feel like you have to hold yourself to the fires of others. You can be your own person and stand in your own truth and story on your own. That's enough, right? Because it is yours. It belongs to nobody but you.
Thank you. Great. So we have time for about 2 more questions.
All right.
I do want to point out that Doug Wilson I think he's trying to say we have beaches down here too, both Rehoboth and Lewes. So if you find yourself out on the East Coast,
Great.
sometime maybe after January, that you need to come visit us here.
Right.
So if Drew Rizzotti, I know I'm saying your name wrong, Drew. I'm so sorry. You had both a question and a really great comment. So if you would like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Chasten.
Hi, Drew.
Oh my gosh. Okay. First, I want to say thank you so much. You inspired me to come out. I just really wanted to just get that out of the way first. And my question is, I come from a very conservative family, and I know your parents were pretty conservative. So I was wondering how long did it take them to come around to really accepting you? Because I feel like it's taken my parents a pretty long time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to see you, Drew. Unfortunately, I can't write a prescription for acceptance.
Yeah.
It's not like I can give your parents a 5-day dose of acceptance pills and then they'll be ready to go. It takes everybody a different amount of time. The thing, I hope you don't lose hope in them. I remember when I was, ran away from my parents, I felt like all was lost. And then we had the hardest conversations. And and it required all of us to be really vulnerable, especially, I don't know how your family is, but we did not talk about our feelings. And I remember one of the first questions was, I just don't know why you would choose something like this. And it took everything in me to swallow that anger and explain to my parents through love, you know, I have battled this for 18 years inside of me. I have stared at your gun case contemplating ending it because you and society have made me feel like this was a choice that I could make. And it was not a choice. If I could have chosen to be the thing that would have made you happy, I would have chosen that. If I could have chosen the easier path, I would have chosen that. If I could have chosen the thing that would have helped other people love me and accept me and made my life easier from the get-go, I would have chosen that. Why do you think I would choose something that would force me to believe that I had to run away from you? And that really opened my parents' eyes. I didn't give up on them and they didn't give up on me. And I hope, you know, I can't make it all get better over Zoom, and I can't wipe away everything that's hurting you. So there are two things here. You can stay in this fight for as long as you can possibly muster the energy. You can also take a break and hope that they come around. And then there will sometimes be people in your life that you will have to walk away from. I don't think you're there yet, and you don't need to be there yet. But there will be people along the way who you will just have to choose to not spend any of your energy on because they're not worth it. Because you're such a great, lovely person who doesn't deserve any of that negativity in your life. But if your parents aren't quite ready to have those conversations, just trust that there are countless other people around you who are ready to support you and have those conversations with you. And when we're in the LGBTQ community, we have this special little superpower where we just get to choose our family. And don't be afraid to choose some other family members, to surround yourself with people who will affirm your identity, who will tell you and remind you daily that you are worth love and acceptance and community and family. And hopefully when your parents are ready to have that conversation, they'll come to the table ready for it. But we also can't force people to have the conversation if they're just not ready. We can hold out hope that they'll be ready. And sometimes we have to accept that they might never be ready. But in the meantime, find ways to affirm yourself on your own and find other people who are going to do it for you.
All right, thank you. And Drew, you probably have about 200 people on this call who have their arms around you right now. So we're all getting verklempt. Anyway, so we have reached the 1 hour mark. I think Mayor Pete might have an event tonight too, so I'm sure you all are very busy. So just a real quick reminder, I'm going to put this in the chat. We encourage you to purchase a copy of today's book. It supports the author, which is always good. And we encourage you to support our local independent bookstores by purchasing it from them. So if you purchase it through Browse About Books, you can get a signed bookplate that goes with it. And they do ship. It's a $5 shipping fee. So I have put that link in the chat. If you are a Delaware resident, you can get a library card and borrow the book from the Delaware Library, and that is in there. And I also wanted to point out that Fay is also a published author. She was our interviewer today, and I've put in some links in the chat about how to get a hold of her books. And we will send all this information out by email. So Chasten, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And if everyone would like to unmute themselves and applaud and say thank you, that would be great.
Thank you.
Woo!
Very nice.
Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Hi, Drew.
Look at you
Thank
all.
you, Fay, too.
So
It was great.
Yes.
Thank you, Fay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Great job, Fay.
Yeah.
Good job, Fay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very uplifting.
Take
Chasten,
care.
Thank you.
good job. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Say hi to Pete.
I will. I will. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
And May says hello.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Visit us.
Yeah.
We'll get him here one of these days.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for
Thank
sharing.
you.
I see some dogs on the screen. I'm sure they're sending their best wishes. So thank you, everyone. And we hope to see you again soon.
Thank
Bye-bye
you.
now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.